Okay. Hi, Eric.
Hi. How are you, YoLanda?
I'm good.
I never know what to call you. I like YoLanda is my favorite.
Oh, I know. It's funny
Of all the
because
things that I've known you as.
people call me
YoLanda is the perfect
Yoli,
fit.
yeah.
I just call you friend.
Oh, I know, exactly. We've been friends for a while. I would have to say that when I think about you and the group over in Laguna Beach, you guys are kind of towards the not quite at the beginning of my awakening journey, but definitely contributing to sort of like a lot of my process in awakening. So I'm so excited to talk to you. And Eric is the host for Awakening Code Radio, which you created, right? You came up with that. And
I did. That was about 10 years ago. Actually, this year will be the 10-year anniversary.
Can you believe that?
I can't, because it's a weekly show and I never do anything once a week in my life. And I'm pretty much there, as you know, Michelle,
it's a commitment.
co-hosts with me. So we manage it together. She does so much of the work and the co-hosting, and Colleen, who you know, she does our admin. So that's why I've been able to keep doing it, is I just show up and talk. And we have had amazing guests over the years. It's definitely been part of my awakening journey, just to be able to talk to all these different people. So it's been a blast.
I would have to say that that's the number one thing I've noticed, just being a facilitator for everything that I do. I know it's the same for all of us, is that we're receiving the same wisdom and energy as we're holding the space for other people. So it's just so beautiful how it's always a synergy.
Oh yeah. And if it's not the same, it's still information that we can factor into our lives and go, well, that vibrates with me, or it doesn't. And then even beyond that, if it does vibrate, what am I going to do with it? And if it doesn't, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to say, oh, they're stupid or they're wrong. It's none of that. We're all the while, we're offering things that could be valuable to other people. And just like in this conversation, there might be some parts that just don't align with certain people. That's okay. There are parts that do. Let that be a part of your growth.
Right, exactly. It's kind of like I always say too, just take what resonates and the rest, just disregard it. We don't need to come into judgment. Yeah, exactly. So, and then of course, you also created a video on YouTube back when YouTube first started, and it was called Sonic Geometry. And that was sort of something that was, your beginning intro to, being more like out there in the world.
Absolutely.
Was that video. And did Colleen help you put that together?
Colleen did not. My good
friend, that was just you.
Yeah, no, Alana, right. Me. It was Alana Luna. So truly, it was a video that was a piece of passion for sure for both of us. I got what could only be called a download in again, almost exactly 10 years ago. It was August of 2012. I was in my conference room in my office building, and I literally heard a voice in my head sounding like it was speaking to me. Go into your conference room and draw a triangle on the whiteboard. And I drew this, and then it was like, do this, and we'll talk about it. But what came out was like, it looked like I was losing my mind on this whiteboard. It looked like Beautiful Mind, where all these scribbles and arrows and numbers, and I'm like, what am I seeing here? But it actually made sense in many ways. And I wrote it down. I recopied it off of there on a piece of paper. I showed it to Michelle. I showed it to Alana, this woman I had met only digitally. Her birthday is 11/11, and we 11/11 Awakening Code page. And she was studying to become an audio and video producer. And I sent it to her, and she goes, I think I went to college to make this video.
Wow.
I made it single-handedly, and it looks as good as many videos that you would watch on like History Channel or whatever. And we didn't know if we were going to get the interest of 5,000 people or 10,000 people. Would have seemed crazy. And the video itself and the other one we made and all of the copies of it and the shares and stealing of it and everything else, it's probably up in the 6-7 million views. And the exciting thing about it is original information. It's something that I was shown, I was able to share. And oddly enough, it seems so obvious, but it was not something that was known before. So if I will just think of that, put it on my tombstone, that's what
I love, and there's a lot of things you can put on your tombstone now, right? Like you've accomplished a lot.
That's a big one. And I'm thrilled with it. It's what got me on Ancient Aliens and Contact in the Desert and Gaia TV. It's all from this video. And seriously, what it's about, sacred geometry, frequency, energy, physics, vibration, none of that stuff was in my wheelhouse. I mean, I failed math in high school, didn't take any math in college, and I only went to college anyway for about 6 months. So none of this was in my field of awareness. And yet somehow it came through. I am a musician, albeit not a great musician, but I am a musician. So I had that component. I wrote a book about dolphins and dolphins' incredible ability to use frequency, hypersonic frequency, where we hear in the vibrations per second, those are called Hertz cycles. We hear comfortably in the low hundreds, high hundreds. Dolphins in the range of 60,000 vibrations cycles per second. And that's what ultrasound. So if a woman is pregnant, gets an ultrasound and we see an image, that's what dolphins can do. They can literally see inside using this ultrasonic technology. That's where we learned it from. The idea of ultrasound hospitals came from dolphins and bats. So I was already fascinated with the idea of frequency, and then combined with this download that came through about these number codes, and I applied them as frequency. That's what I did, was I applied them as frequency. And I'll just take you to the revelation part, is that when I played a triangle, it made a tone, and I have a tone set here. It's actually the one I took to Bimini that you were on this trip.
Oh yeah, that was so fantastic. So just to kind of give you guys a little backstory on Bimini and sonic geometry, Eric, all this revelation he's about to introduce you to, it brought him into creating these experiences for people. And that's actually where I finally met you, was at one of the sonic geometry. We used to call them sleepovers because they don't do it now, but at the Integratron in Joshua Tree, they used to let you have your events there, and we would spend the night in the Integratron, which is a very super cosmic frequency instrument that, we could go on and on, but
to be able to spend the night there numerous times is,
oh my gosh, just to have that experience. And we got to do it numerous times. I think I remember being there at least a couple times with you, and that was just
for sure
amazing. So keep going with the revelation.
So, well, and then yes, Liz, our friend Liz Bell, she hosted this dolphin trip, and I kind of went along as a slight co-host, but also just the speaker, and it was to encounter dolphins. And there's these many, they're kind of like there all the time, as almost like human dolphin ambassadors, and we got to see them twice while we were there, just in crystal clear waters, and these friendly dolphins, just an unbelievable experience. So I took these chimes with us there and played them there. But what came through that day in my office, after I was told to draw a triangle, I said, okay. And I thought that was all I was going to hear. And then, okay, make note of its combination of angles. So a triangle, no matter what it looks like, the three angles in it will always total 180. So I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't know what purpose. And then the voice said, no, play that as a tone. And I'm like, play that as a tone? How would I do that? Well, we all have in our phones now these downloads and apps that we can download a tone generator. I took a minute to do that, and I played the frequency of a triangle, which I'm not going to do it through my phone. I'm going to do it over this so you can hear it, but that's 180 cycles per second.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, well, I did it. And they're like, well, no, you're just getting started. You have to go through all the geometry, all the flat two-plane geometry. So I'm like, okay, what's the next one? Well, that's a square. And a square is an octave. It's double.
Oh, wow.
Same note. So here's the triangle. Here's the square. And I'm like, right away, I understood that there's a musical component because that's an octave. Same note, but twice as high in pitch. And as I moved on into the pentagon, 5 sides, it's this tone. And that tone is called a fifth, and it is the most common musical interval in music. In fact, our musical tuning scale is called a circle of fifths. You start on C, it goes to G, G goes to D, D to A to E, cycles all the way back around to C. So this fifth interval is really important. And here we are in geometry, hearing this, like, wow, That's significant. And then we go to the hexagon. That was another octave of the triangle and square, just higher. And then it was the septagon, the seven-sided of 900 degrees that provided this, and that's the middle tone required to create a major chord, which we call coming home in music, because no matter how a song starts, if it starts dangerous sounding in tone or sad or somber, there's something in our heart that is just wants this resolution of hearing that major chord is what you hear in movies when everything's going right. It's a couple's falling in love, or the king and queen are being announced, or the battle's been won, or the angels are singing. It's that exact chord. It also seems to be kind of programmed in us mysteriously that when we hear it, we get this affirmation like, everything's right. And so here's geometry revealing this musical interval it means something so significant. It means if the universe is geometric in nature, which physicists now believe, and geometry reveals harmony, then we are living in literally a harmonic system. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just learned something accidentally that for sure must be known. So I run to my laptop and I type in geometry reveals harmonics, major chord harmonics. I typed it 10 different ways and could not find a single match. So from that moment to this day, I am known as the guy that discovered geometry reveals major chord harmonics. And that makes absolutely no sense because people have been talking about it. Pythagoras even said there is music in the humming of the string. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There's music in the spacing of the spheres. Most people have heard the spacing of the spheres part. They haven't. There's geometry in the humming of the strings and vice versa. So you would think that people would be on the path of
like they would connect that somehow.
Yeah, connect that. And I don't know why no one did, but somebody had to at some point, so it might as well be a dummy like me.
Well, you're actually, that's what's so funny about you saying that is like you had to be like almost the higher intelligence that you were tapping into, that voice that came through. To me, that's definitely the higher intelligence. And I was just discussing with a friend of mine this morning that the higher intelligence is simple. It's like almost dumbly simple, And I was going to say with Pythagoras, he was always talking about the perfect fifth. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting.
He was aware of it. It's from Pythagoras that we got our musical ideas of like octaves. Mm-hmm. That we discovered it way back then before we had any digital equipment, of course. He took a string, he plucked it, it made a tone, it was tight, and then he divided it exactly in half and plucked each half, and they were an octave above. They were the same note, so he plucked the whole string and got this, mm-hmm. and then when he divided it in two, each half was the same note high. So our concept of octaves, it was Pythagoras who put that together, and then all these other ratios of dividing that string in mathematical ratios is how we get these thirds, fifths, fourths. That was Pythagoras who put that in place.
I love it. And then one of the things you did that I remember being very next level that, it's one of my epic moments in my awakening journey was when you and Michelle teamed together to do these dolphin journeys where you would play these frequencies that you're speaking about into, just out through a speaker. And then it would draw the dolphins in. And it would be this total harmonic experience,
Right. And well, it was a little different than that. And I'll clarify. One, Michelle was already doing those dolphin trips. Again, I was just sort of the tag along, like I was with Liz to Bimini, tag along. And I did bring the speakers and stuff. Dolphins, especially out here where I live, Laguna and Dana Point, it has more dolphin and whale sightings than anywhere in the world. So it's very common to encounter dolphins. They're very playful and engaging, and they will ride the bow wave of water pushed forward by a boat. So the dolphins coming to a boat is usually because it's pushing this water and they surf it playfully and they ride it with precision, and then they go away, and right then there's two more or three or five swim with it. But if you stop the boat, then they generally just swim away. There's no longer something for them to surf and play in. But what we found out in this, it's not proof of anything, but what we found out is that the boat stopped we continued to play the tones and they just stayed with us, which they don't do. So that was very interesting, that when we played these tones loud, and I would put one speaker facing down into the hull of the boat, where the whole boat became like a resonator of these frequencies, and then one for people to hear. I had one facing up and one facing down into the hull, and it was amazing. I didn't expect it. I was hoping, fingers crossed, but they just hung with us, and then their behavior became very slow and intentionally looking up eye to eye with us as we were playing. Profound experiences for sure. And anecdotally, it does seem to be that nature understands these harmonics, because these harmonics actually reveal the structure of nature. You're talking about geometry, or things like the Fibonacci spiral, or the pineal counter-rotating spiral that makes a pine cone or a pineapple or a pineal gland. Those are geometric structures. So it would seem to make sense that nature would recognize and respond to the sonic representation of that geometry.
Especially, and with sound, I would like to touch more on that with you, because I feel you have a very deep understanding of that with all of your research and things you've discovered, is that, it's almost like the universe is held together by tones and sounds. And
everything is started by frequency. I mean, right. The world, the entire universe is frequency. There's vibration. It's vibration and spin. But before even spin, there's vibration. There's just waveform. And we can see it everywhere. You see it in literal waves coming into the beach. You see it in the wavy undulations of natural form. I mean, not Terence McKenna, Alan Watts. He had this epiphany moment. It's like nature is wiggly. What are we obsessed with all this straight line geometry when everything we look at in natural form, hills, water, trees, us, leaves, eyes, everything has got this curve to it. Why are we so stuck on getting things straight and ironed out? And let's straighten this up between us. Let's get it ironed out. He was like, it's really because it's just easier. As soon as you're working with straight line geometry and concepts, it's much easier to wrap your mind around than this incredible spin, twist, undulation, movement, motion, and rest. Think of it like a jellyfish swimming. Those things are hard to compute and factor into, equations.
It's almost like the difference between linear thinking and multidimensionality, right?
Or masculine and feminine. I'll take you back and forth into my little place, which you've been here before.
Oh yeah, let's kind of walk around your house.
You stayed here just recently, and let's take a look at a couple of forms. So here's a tetrahedron. This is the smallest geometric solid there can be. And it would have a tone as well, because it's 4 triangles. So 4 times 180 is 720. This would have a tone of 720 hertz. But it's still rigid. And to be a geometric solid, you have to have flat surfaces, you have to have edges, and you have to have points. So this, as far as most geometry and people that work with geometry every day is concerned, even physicists go, this is the universe. This is the building block of the universe, because nothing gets smaller than this. But that's not true. If we feminize geometry and we think of curve, well, here's it flat. And some people would recognize that as the vesica Pisces, the intersection between 2 flat circles. But it also right away looks much more organic, like a leaf or a seed pod or an eye. But actually, this is a 3-dimensional geometric shape. It has flat surfaces, it has edges, and it has points. But it only has 3. It has 3 edges, 3 sides, and 2 points.
Wow.
The true smallest geometric solid, and it launches a whole universe of feminine curve and twist and spin, because it's built into it from the beginning. So I started doing construction using that form. This shape, artist Michael Evans, who lives not too far from me and is a good friend now, he called that shape the Tryon Ray. And I built a form, came to me, that's a 12 projections of these forms coming out from center. And what they do is they follow the trajectory of this form right here, and that's called a vector equilibrium. Did was follow the trajectory of these 12 vectors, but instead reimagined these straight lines instead with curves. And here's this form that came out, this beautiful flower of 12 dimensional petals. the crazy thing about that is I built a larger structure that has that 12-petaled flower at the very top of it. And I'll show you that there. It's hard to see, but it's in there. It's all closed in, but right there is the middle of that 12-petaled flower. And I just built that with pipe cleaners and styrofoam balls. And I followed its own information structure. And when I was done building it and sitting on a table and I turned it over, it revealed sacred geometry. It revealed the flower of life. And there's these gold pipe cleaners showing you that this 3D and actual 4D model that either looks like a molecule or an atom or almost like the Star of David, the Merkaba. If you look at it just on the right angle, it looks like a Merkaba. Here's a section of it that Michael Evans created, this breathing model of a tetrahedron that goes in and out, convex and concave. All of a sudden you have this model that repeats sacred geometry that's been drawn by humans all over the world for thousands of years. It's like there is an innate knowingness that we have that's trying to communicate with us, both frequency and form. And it goes back to these old stories. I mean, these number sequences, one of these number sequences that came out through my video is 432. 432 is this mysterious number that shows up all over the world before we knew the number was communicating with itself. So it's almost like they're mythological numbers. Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero's Journey and describes that hero's journey myth, as he was traveling the world and studying these world religions and myths, he also saw these number patterns embedded in these stories. And he's like, what are those? Why the number 72? Every major religion has the number 72 featured in it. 432 is featured in most religions somehow. It's like, what is going on here? Well, it's almost, to me now, seems like we were being given clues and codes and keys somehow from somewhere outside of our awareness. What we could have possibly known, say, roughly 6,000 years ago is when these started surfacing with the creation of written language. And I believe that we have been being guided to factor in these components, these numerical codes, sacred geometry formations, and make sense of it, what is trying to come through. And when it does, and when it clicks in your brain, you go, holy shit, this is shared information. And if it's shared information, who shared it? Well, we can go back to the point in history when it was first shared. It's 6,000 years ago. And before that, the human experience was mostly hunter-gatherer. But then in one point on Earth, in the ancient region of Sumeria, we have the world's first written language, this math system that launches geometry and algebra and calculus. We have the world's first wheeled and axled vehicle and pyramid and plow and arch and pottery wheel and loom to weave fabrics. And these didn't exist. These weren't tweaks of existing technology. These were just the light bulb explosion of these technologies. And we can read the writings that these Sumerians wrote and said, how in the world could they possibly have done this? And they said, we didn't. Visitors came from the sky and shared this information with us. Well, this is information now that as we plug it in to our own understanding of physics and science and measurement and distance and cosmic forces, these numbers just show up time and time and time again. A guy that I've worked with, two people I've worked with, Nassim Haramein and Robert Grant, both who have minds way more expansive than mine that can take information, run with it miles farther than me. But their research reveals this 432 connection, the foundational tone of F sharp at 180 degrees. It's like, what are we being shown? And I believe we're just taking our first steps into understanding what it is. But it is like true holy grail of a bed of information that once we incorporate it, we're on our way to truly taking that next up level. I actually call it in my workshop lectures that this was cheat codes, like in a video game. These were up-leveling cheat codes that as soon as you get it and apply them the right way, boom, you're almost going to get this bubble pop up-level experience across the board, all over all humanity. It's not just going to be the few scientists. It's somehow going to change our whole experience. And that's what I truly believe.
I love it. That's like, these are the types of things I wish they would teach in schools rather than the usual garbage that kind of keeps you in that little box of thinking, when really we're meant to be living outside of this box and expanding all the time. It's like, there's really no arrival. It's just opening and opening. And the other thing that I think is key is the heart, like keeping this information in that higher level of intelligence. What have you discovered with the heart? Does the heart have a certain frequency? Is there anything?
Well, if you start at the tone C, which, people get into very specifics, and I don't do that. It sounds like I do, but specifics of what is the meaning of something. So if somebody says, oh, this particular frequency is the vibration of love. A lot of people have heard 528. Oh, that's 520 cycles. It's like, well, somebody said that somewhere, and now it's a belief system. Same thing with the chakra system, that you start at the root, and somebody said, well, the first note in a major scale is C, so let's make C the root chakra note. It could be any note. It could be whatever vibrates your tailbone for you personally. That could be your own personal vibration. So, but in that scheme of things, yes, if your root chakra is C, then as you move up, your fourth chakra would be F, and your fifth chakra, actually not your fifth, your high heart, like your 4.5 chakra, your high heart would be the F sharp that is in the first tone that launched sonic geometry at 180, 360, 720. That would be the tone of the high heart. So yes, and absolutely, the payoff of this is not just getting more information. There has to be a payoff. And to me, the payoff is that we're activating this geometric form in the middle of our brain, this pineal gland, that people can sometimes do in meditation, can certainly do taking plant medicines, and you start not only seeing the grid, but you feel connected. Terence McKenna said when he did mushrooms that the boundaries were dissolved. That's the beauty of this information, I think, is it could ultimately be a boundary dissolver. If you realize that everything is connected, like that complicated model I just showed you, that every little ball or nodal point is connected to every other into infinity, that's when it starts speaking to your heart, when you think, I am connected to everything and everything is connected to me. So that's the payoff. It's not that it's, wow, we're going to send rockets to Mars and beyond or whatever because of the science. It is this opening up of what does this information really mean? Why was it shared by these extraterrestrial visitors, as the Sumerians said? It could be science and discovery and technology, but I also believe that it is allowing us to feel our way into this hyper-connected universe, the holographic field.
And what I love about what you've demonstrated and shown with your modeling is that I feel that was a huge gateway for you to be able to actually see it visually, because I feel like most of us are visual learners, but not necessarily. Like some people, like you said, Terence McKinnon utilized a mushroom as his gateway. And I think that there's different ways we can access that higher intelligence, where we can actually comprehend what we're seeing, or even seeing beyond the human eyes. Like that's where I think the pineal gland comes in.
Well, it's in us. I mean, it's definitely in us. This pineal DMT activator is already in our physiology. So yes, what you're saying is absolutely true. We are already equipped with the hardware, and probably even in our DNA strand. What we know, we've made huge giant strides in the last 30 years regarding DNA, but we understand about 10% of its function, and the 90% we don't understand, we call junk DNA.
Right.
Well, that's ridiculous. There's no junk DNA. We just don't understand what it does. I happen to think it's just latent keys and codes that when activated will do this thing. And what activates it? Well, maybe we get a jump start by plant medicines, not for everybody. But I think organically, if our race lives another 1,000 years, which would still be the blink of an eye in the grand scheme of things, dolphins have been on this planet 50 million years. We've been on this planet looking similar to what we look like 1 million, but we've only lived as a society, together with technology for about 10,000 years. That's very rudimentary, technology. Industrial revolution is 200 years old. I mean, it's blink of an eye. So if we can imagine ourselves 1,000 years in the future or 10,000 years in the future, I am so confident that this junk DNA and this DMT, extraction device and delivery device is going to become online, and we are for sure going to up level and understand things to where we look at science today and religion and our spirituality the way we look back 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago at myth. It's like, oh, that was quaint, but it was their journey. We're on the first steps, but I think these steps are truly now aligned with incorporating science, physics, spirituality, heart, biology, our purpose, mission statement. Why are we even here? You can answer all those questions and still go, well, what purpose is that? And I believe there is a purpose. I believe that us being consciousness being transported around by our physiological meat suits is highly important somehow into the grand scheme of things. That what we're learning by what we forgot when we came here and what we're relearning is like, there's a great avenue on-ramp back into the field of they learned something in a different way. It felt new to them and it expanded them. We really did need humans to go through this feeling of separation, but then learning that they're not separate and learning of this geometric, beautiful design that the engineer with the big E or G, God, created, or maybe the smaller engineers and smaller case gods like extraterrestrials designed us to do something important. And that's the belief. I don't believe we were created as slaves or sinners or, non-important. I believe we're highly important in the grand scheme of all things.
Right. And our bodies it's almost like we've got this technology in our bodies that we just don't fully understand. And the codes to the universe are in numbers. And, many geniuses of like hundreds of years ago even saw that. We've got Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein, and they all kind of came back to the awareness that imagination is more important than this knowledge even. So it's like
there is a great mystery behind it all. You can get to the heart of physics and science to your day and your level of experiencing with it and working with it and making technology out of it. But beyond both Tesla and Einstein and probably most physicists, it doesn't answer the big mystery. It just gives you some information. But Einstein said, how can a proton that's over here and a proton that's 1 billion miles away respond exactly the same way as each other? He called it spooky action at a distance. Or Tesla believed the most important information he ever got was delivered straight into his brain by extraterrestrials. He didn't invent things the way Thomas Edison invented things. Thomas Edison took 500 tries to create something pretty simple like a light bulb. A little filament glowing with electricity inside a vacuum so it would continue to glow without heating and breaking the glass. Tesla got this idea of the dynamo, the thing that creates electricity. He saw it in his head and he spun this complicated machine around in his mind. He built the first one and it worked. So that is not invention as we call the invention process. That is a divine download. And that's what he called it. He said, this is information that came to me through a source that I don't fully understand. Yet I know it's coming to me and I believe it's coming from a source that fully.
Mm-hmm. And that's how you got your download, it was just directly planted. And you don't even claim it as your own because you even said it was like a voice, even though that could be yourself on a higher plane. But I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point. And I think that's the key to the divine feminine as well, is that the yin energy is all about going into that mystery and into the void and not needing to wrap your mind around it, because it really is like more of a heart. Maybe you could call it third eye, but I feel like it really is this heart. Like we've got the Institute math. What is it? Heart math.
Heart math.
That's something I've been kind of really, they're just exploring that, barely scratching the surface of, that intelligence. So
that's what we're doing all the way here. Every advancement is just reminding us that we're continuing to barely scratch the surface of what this is. And you touched on a big point of the idea of ownership of this information. I had never been in the field of working with other scientists and physicists. I had no place in it. I still kind of feel like I don't, but I've had the opportunity to work in these think tanks and with some brilliant minds. Manas Kafatos, one of the most famous physicists in the world, has written more books on physics and spirituality. New York Times bestsellers with Deepak Chopra, was in my apartment looking at that model and said, that is the most beautiful model of the quantum universe I've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
I have no right to claim that. But what I have learned is people want to own what they have discovered. And it has been a bit troubling to me. I've seen it. I've seen my work that came to me and I shared it. I've seen other people just share it and claim it as their own. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I fully realized, and YoLanda and I, as we were creating the video, we were both clear on, this is free source information. This is not Eric Rankin proprietary copyright registered trade.
Well, it's just like everything, all these breakthroughs should be common free information.
They should be, but they're not.
Right.
People get very proprietary because we run on a fear and lack system that recompensates people for their discoveries. So you want to say, this is mine. And the reason usually you want to say it's mine is just two reasons: money and fame and recognition. And if somebody might make a ton of money on this work, and I might look at it, and I can't lie and say it doesn't trigger me every once in a while. When I watched a video the other day, it said sacred geometry and a cool image. And I said, I'll click on it. I was sitting in just watching this TV, and the words, the very first words, I'm like, wait a minute. And it was another narrator reading my exact sonic geometry script with a complete other set of images. And it had hundreds of thousands of views. And I'm like, why would you bother? But they're obviously thinking they could share it and make money off of it and
wow,
make it. So I'm just like, you have to kind of let that stuff go. It truly is source material. I love the movie Arrival. Did you see Arrival?
I can't remember if I saw it. Was that like with the
giant squid beings?
Oh, right. I think I saw it in the theater. Wasn't that a while ago that came out?
It was, and it's my favorite extraterrestrial movie.
Oh.
But part of it is these extraterrestrials shared pieces of a giant device, like a time wormhole device, but they shared 12 different pieces of it with 12 different countries in the world. So if we couldn't get along and work together in community, we were never going to build this machine. And I just think that is such a profound thing to incorporate into a movie about extraterrestrials and big picture thoughts. Is if we don't work together, we're not going to make it to the next level. If we feel that the way to resolve conflict is by destroying things and killing each other, we won't make it. And rightly so, we shouldn't make it.
And even just judging and finger pointing and calling one another names, like you've got like this split happening that we've been really seeing, just this gap widening with like politics and health information and science. And it's like now everything is starting to see this separation consciousness, and
everything's something to argue over.
Yeah. And it's like, even just like, oh, well, that's your opinion. I've even had like my family tell me that, or I shouldn't even say names or, who it is, but it's just like people in general, like saying, well, that's your opinion. And it's like, well, no, I mean, yes, it's a perspective. Everything's a perspective, but there's such a division where it's like people can literally divide themselves from another or a group of people and be like, well, you're a conspiracy theorist or you're this. And it's like, even just not even like attaching to yourself, like a self-identity is also an issue. It's like even people identifying as different pronouns, like that's a thing. And it's like, what in the actual Sam Hill is going on right?
HE double toothpicks, and in the end, you could see if someone said that's your perspective or your pronouns sound odd to me or whatever it is, you could say, yeah, and, or so we could, if we wanted to sit down and say what's different about us, it would be a never ending conversation. So what is the overarching thing? If we're all different from each other, does that mean we should all just do nothing except judge and say everybody else is wrong other than us if they don't hold our opinion? No. it means that we should all have our truth, live in our truth. As long as the important thing to me, as long as we're not harming each other, we're not inhibiting the truth and pursuit other people are on, the path of spiritual awakening. As long as we're not inhibiting someone else's freedom and life, then I think there's nothing that a person could say to me that I wouldn't just go, well, that's interesting, or it's not what I've learned, but I'm glad I heard it almost. I mean, I'm glad knowing that there's all this.
There's so many options out there, right?
Otherwise,
there's so
we'd
many
be
ways
robots.
to look at something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we would be drone bees, and bees are beautiful, but I don't want to just be replicating the same information as everybody else. We are free of our experiences, and we should be celebrating that, not criticizing that. And we're at the critical junction in time when we truly, I believe, and I'm very hopeful, but I truly believe if we don't get this right, we won't be around. And actually, for the health of the planet and the health of the universe, any species that says violence against itself is their message to the collective, that's a cancerous message, and it shouldn't go out into the collective. You don't want cancer running rampant in the system of your body. We don't want an idea of death and destruction and violence being the cell in the grand universal system. Right.
And we see that replaying over and over again, especially the last few years. It's been like this self-destruct program or this fear of death program. And it's just this, being replayed over and over again. And what we're really experiencing, like you said, we're at this tipping point. And it's been for thousands of years prophesied about the rainbow prophecy, or, the rainbow tribe coming back together. And I really believe that it's what you're saying. It's all of these walks of life coming together and recognizing that we're all connected somehow. Even if we're different, we have different opinions, different whatever, we can find that common ground, which is truly at the heart center, the vibrations that we've been discussing. We all respond to these vibrations. And I love the point that you brought up, that even the root chakra and how it was decided that the root chakra is a C, and going from there, it like really feeling it in your body. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like, this is the right answer for everybody. Everyone can resonate even a little bit differently, but you get to feel it and experience it.
Right. It's very interesting to me because, and this will sound kind of conspiratorial as I watch these movements going down, in the midst of the COVID era and everything else, is we see these movements that feel and sound good. Black Lives Matter and getting the pronouns correct and inclusion of all people for all identities. However, yes, that is right. But it's being delivered to us in a way that makes it more of a contentious, argumentative process than it does an inclusive process. And so it's not okay to say all lives matter. And yet, to me, it seems crazy that you can't say all lives matter. I have treated, and people like Martin Luther King said, I dream of the day when we don't have to have Black rallies and say we matter. Of course we matter, and just as everybody matters. Right now, if we're being told that you can't say all life matters or you're insensitive, that seems weird to me. It seems weird that if somebody wants to identifies as whatever they identify as, gay or straight or trans or whatever, that they have to hang a shingle out and say, I've got to push this on you, rather than just, we live in a world that says, it's fine whatever you are. I don't want to make any distinction. As long as you're kind and considerate of me, that's how I'm going to be kind.
Well, and it's again, if we go back to what you mentioned about even the conspiracy thing, it's like that word itself was brought into the consciousness so that we could be distracted and easily confused and then controlled, of course. And if you really, we're looking at history, and I loved your sonic geometry presentation that you did at the Integratron all those years back, where you even brought into your presentation how our people have been manipulated through frequency
since the beginning.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about that for those who may not have been introduced to that idea?
Well, here's the mother of all conspiracy theories regarding 432. It's unprovable, and that's what makes the perfect bait for a conspiracy. But we do have some facts that interestingly enough, throughout world culture, it seems like middle A, not middle C, but middle A, vibrating somewhere in the realm of 432. Right now, it's 440, the official tuning structure of all instruments that are orchestral instruments, pianos, tubas, it doesn't matter what it is, are tuned to be in harmonic with that middle A vibrating at 440 cycles. It's been a little higher in the past, 444. It's been lower, 428. For a long while, concert tuning was 432. Well, when tuning is 432 and other notes around it are nature's tones, it's like, wow, just hearing those tones might put us in the field of awakening. Just like when we played those tones to dolphins and they stayed with us. It's like nature seems to recognize and resonate with these tones. And if they do, could they be activating us into this morphogenic holographic field where we are all connected to each other? And if that's true, and if it's that powerful and big, would someone want to control that and say, we get to understand that and the masses don't? Well, right at the moment when the technology existed to now record and broadcast to the masses music, it was changed. It was changed off of 432 to 440. And all of a sudden, just like a puff of smoke, all those beautiful vibrations that might be inviting us into that field of connection just goes poof, and it's not there. Our bodies don't feel it. Our mind doesn't sense it. Our ears don't hear it. Most people, you and I, if you've never watched the sonic geometry video or heard music tuned exactly, not just drop tuned, but tuned to these incremental frequencies of exact harmonics to each other, most people, like 99.999% of the world's population, has never heard these nature's harmonics. That's pretty effed up if they could potentially do something. But was there a moment when the controlling few, if you want to call them the Illuminati or the whatever, the chosen whatever, the one percenters, that would have been the time to do it? And sure enough, that's when it was done. When we went from 432 to 440 was the moment that mass electronic dispersion of music, so all the music we hear on the radio and concerts, commercials, anything, even meditation music, relaxing music, it's all still tuned to 440. And even though it sounds pleasing to our ears, our bodies are like almost, because it's so close, almost more off. There's nothing more off than near miss than a far miss. If you get a far miss between notes, it is this slow vibration. But if it's a near miss, it's like, oh, it's like an electric buzz.
Right.
We might be being just molecularly dismantled to where none of this can, our biology cannot just rest in this field of beautiful harmonics. So my mission statement, hopefully other people, and they are taking these exact tones, and it's a lot of work. You can't just detune a piano and say, or your synthesizer and say, I'll go from 440 and drop it 8 hertz to 432. It's still off. And we're not going to get into the details of why it is off, but it was built to sound good enough to our ears. But frequency does a million things, and music to our ears is one sliver of that. So I think it's far more important to stay in that realm of mathematically perfect harmonics that nature reveals in its construction than does it sound beautifully soothing to our ears. And I know this is my life's work, however long I'm on this planet, I know it is to help foster and incubate this information to deliver these tone sets and this geometry, that I didn't invent, but I was able to see the 2D geometry, the template that we call this, the flower of life, is actually that bursting frequency flower that's the vector equilibrium that Buckminster Fuller discovered, more or less. It all connects. And when you start truly allowing yourself to drop into the all connectedness of it, it's like a miracle. It is like taking the red pill and just poof, your mind just...
It opens you up like that mushroom trip. It does. It's like, and you don't have to take mushrooms.
You might not see all of it, and I'm not against mushrooms and plant medicine. I listen to a lot of Terence McKenna and how he eloquently describes what function they may have served. And maybe it is just sort of like a crutch in the moment. But teaching aids are important. It's in the process of learning.
Right. And I also think that because we've been so inundated and indoctrinated with these off frequencies that you've just been discussing and all these different things to distract us. I mean, that's only one aspect of manipulating information and like our physical body structure, molecular structures. I believe that, and I just spoke to someone who was into broadcast journalism where he wanted to speak the truth and share the truth. And he ended up leaving that industry because he realized the media didn't care about the truth. So it's in many layers of our culture and indoctrination that we've been led away from the truth of what these bodies are capable of. I believe that's why Jesus came, which kind of leads us into the book that you're writing. I'd love to kind of touch on that a little bit.
We were going to talk about that. That's another hour. So,
well, I know that's a whole nother thing, but it's just like knowing what these bodies are even for. We're just scratching the surface of all of this, and I love that you're a musician. I believe that was
I do too. I love playing music and being in that field of creating music with people, because I believe one of the greatest inventions, even though it isn't our own invention, but what we call music as an invention, is one of our best, one of our highest level of things is tapping in, because I think it's sending an echo across the universe. So like, well, at least they got that much. They got that harmonics can make you feel. And for sure, nobody's going to argue. You listen to a major chord and it's going to go, oh, that sounds great. And when you hear a minor chord, you go, ugh, sounds dangerous and foreboding and threatening. That's programming, if you want to call it that. There's no rhyme or reason why those intervals being just slightly different than each other would make us feel differently. So, man, you have to acknowledge that. And yes, the Jesus book, just real quick, I titled it As Above, So Below, the Quantum Teachings of Jesus, because it feels to me like so many of the messages he was delivering it's as if he was aware of these high quantum physics principles. As above, so below. As you believe, the sharing of prayer, being in that field, is a thought a thing that affects something else? Those are high concept, highly probable things in the quantum realm of physics. And I think Jesus was just using the best language he could in the day to share those ideas. So that's what I did. I transcribed one gospel, the Gospel of Matthew, and just imagined it through the lens of the quantum realm physics. And then I did little reflections after each chapter. So it's a short book, but it's been very cathartic to me. And whether it sells a lot of books or not, was not my inspiration for doing it. I did it as my own process and my own journey.
I love it. And I'm so excited to read it. And we'll do a whole nother, maybe we can just talk about that on another time. But as far as all the frequency research you've done and all of these things, like you were saying, you're rubbing shoulders with these genius people that are, best New York Times bestsellers. Next Level, Nassim Haramein, and all of these incredible people. You're definitely up there because, again, like the musician mind, there is a higher intelligence there that you've tapped into that most of these other minds haven't even begun to.
Well, let's break something out a little bit, because we say things like you just said them and they make sense to us, but up there, Buckminster Fuller felt it was very important to understand that we say some things in a relative term, like we call up away from the planet, down into the planet, because up could be exactly opposite to someone who was off the planet, and up would be pointing at Earth and down.
Right. Or a dolphin, right?
Yeah. So instead of that stratification of up there or belonging, even innocently, as you just said it invites this idea of stratification, of there's those who get the information, and then those who disseminate it, and those who get it, and those who have another place, and whatever their place is in it, when ultimately you have to imagine a different field. And that's what this field, oops, let me get it again. Ultimately, this field, there is no up. You can rotate it around, and it is just this rotated thing where every node point is just a moment, its own launch of its own universe that goes out from its own infinity. So that idea of station and up, yes, it's limited by its build, so it looks like a pyramid, but this just wants to keep building into infinity And every one of these little focus points, these nodes, these 0 points, are just launching your own personal experience in the field of everybody else's personal experience.
And it's interconnected.
It's all connected. There is no longer the more important up and down and, more sacred or less. It is.
Well, and it also gives you a great understanding of how one node can affect, 5 other nodes at one time?
Immediately, yes. Immediately.
But then infinitely out.
It would actually affect 12 other nodes at one time.
Wow.
From the simple centered one, it affects immediately the 12 that are around it. But they're getting the impulse. Imagine that this is only as big as an atom. That distance between here and here is almost the same as being the same proton. So this idea of shared, like if you and I touched fingers and then looked at that touching of our fingers through a microscope, you would not see the end of me and the beginning of you. It would vanish. That's literally true. So when we can start wrapping our head around that and not calling that woo-woo or metaphysics and say that's just truly what is going on and we just didn't understand it well enough, let's open ourselves up into this field and mystery and honor each other's contribution to it in community, instead of saying, I follow this guy because he's smart. And Jesus, I don't believe wanted it to be this lateral movement, because he said it many times, the kingdom of heaven is already within you. More or less meaning you don't need to hear it from someone else. It doesn't have to be this filtered down experience. You open yourself up, you're going to get the information. You're living it. Your body already understands it. Your mind is already programmed to receive it. You're standing in your own way. And that's what I got out of Jesus' teaching, is like, get out of the way, let this mysterious experience of what we call life come in, and you will see that you no longer want to poop in your own backyard and kill your own species. You want to protect it and love it, because that's what's going to continue our story into the future.
And share it. Like I would say that's the number one thing when you feel that spark of connection to all life, is that you want to share that awakened truth, because it's so blissful and so it's like all the struggle melts away. And that's when you're living in that miracle frequency,
And it definitely can, there might be people who are hearing you right now. It's like, oh, it opens up to this bliss. And like, oh, the dark night of the soul, and you got to do your shadow work and you got to keep doing it. Jesus kind of actually implies something else. There's only one time where Jesus goes through his dark night of the soul and faces the devil. He's out, he's just been baptized. He goes up for 40 days. He's hungry. He's probably wondering what the heck he's doing. And the devil, Satan, shows up and tempts him 3 times. If you would just renounce your spirituality or God, you could be the ruler of that city, Israel, over there. You could have abundant food. You never need to worry about it again. You could fling yourself off a cliff and not die because God loves you so much. Well, I took that because in the chapter before, both John the Baptist and Jesus implied the kingdom of heaven is within you. Well, that kind of says the kingdom of hell is within you as well. So he went through his kingdom of hell experience. He did his shadow work, but he only needed to do it once. Once he realized that it was his own doubt and inner voice of lack and fear and worry about his existence, once he slayed those dragons, then he's like, I don't need to keep reslaying those dragons. I am now on my mission of expansion and sharing what is coming through me. So this idea of shadow work, and you kind of said it, truly, when you're on your spiritual path, I don't think you need to keep doing the dark work. In fact, I think it just magnifies inviting more dark work into your life. I think that once you have truly had this epiphany, this breakthrough experience, that is when life becomes so sweet. And as you imagine the world to be, the universe conspires to show to you. You believe people are good and the world's a wonderful place, you're going to encounter good people and wonderful things. But if you're opposite, the universe is so powerful and conspires to you personally. If you believe the world's a shitty place full of dangerous people, guess what? It's going to be. That's mastery. And if we don't want to own that in ourselves, we are giving ourselves a huge disadvantage to live this life and to up-level, be ready for the next. I believe in the eternal aspect of continuing on from here, but eternity includes here. It includes, if there is reincarnation, it includes the before, the now, and the after. Not just eternity begins after this. Well, then that's not eternity, because eternity goes both directions.
It starts in the body on this planet. And it's funny, that's exactly what I just tuned into even this morning was ascension. People get it in their mind that it means we're leaving, right? Yeah. But it's not. We're opening up the third eye, the dimensional realization of that there is no end, and there's, and it just how powerful we are, and what it comes down to, like you just said, it's a choice. And
heaven
you get
is here
to
and
choose.
now, and so is hell.
Yep, and you get to choose hell or heaven, and it's literally every moment. And what I believe Jesus mastered in those 40 days, in which we all have the opportunity, because he also said, "You'll do these things and more," the works that he's done. Mastering that. Oh, it literally every time something comes up that may be potentially dark or constricting or limiting, we get to choose that. Whether to stay in fear. Right. Or expand the heart. And it really is that simple. Like the truth is so simple.
It's
and
tragically simple.
Tragically.
It's tragically simple. It is not complicated, but it is not easy. And Jesus says that many times, even just in the one book of Matthew, says this is not complicated stuff. The innocent child can get my teachings. You guys are all, and he's mostly, when he says you guys, he's either talking to his disciples who are learning this information, or he's talking to a Jewish hierarchy, priests and rabbis, and you are motionless.
I know, so are you, but I can hear you. Okay, I think it might pop back in. One sec. Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
So funny.
Oh, there you are. Okay. No, the funny thing is I can edit this, so I'll go back and do whatever.
That was so funny, you just froze. But Jesus, as he's speaking, you're freaking again.
Oh no.
Hold on.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're almost back.
I can hear you at least.
All right. Let's give it a go real quick. Oh, no, it's not going to work. Somehow we lost the connection. We were lucky that it lasted as long as it did.
I know. Well, should we come back in? Well, no, I think we're good. I can see you.
I can see. Let's just try it. So the last thing is Jesus was talking to either his disciples or to the high-ranking priests and scholars in the Jewish religion. And so it sounds like he gets agitated at times. Like, this is not hard stuff to understand. You've made it hard. And you're using that complicated essence of it to control others, that they won't figure it out unless they listen to you how to figure it out. And Jesus is saying it is not hard to figure out. It's just hard to execute. If he says, don't kill, it doesn't mean, well, you can kill sometimes in war. And if it's just, and if somebody's threatening you, he says, don't kill. There it is. There's my commission. Is that hard to understand? No. Is it easy to put in place? Yes. So I just want to try and live my life in the simplicity of these spiritual teachings, not just of Jesus, but of Buddha and Confucius and Taoism and many others that come to the same lesson. Is like our life does not have to be complicated, including spiritual mastery. But is it going to be easy? It's going to challenge your ego. It's going to challenge your faith. It's going to challenge your fears. But we can move through those. If you've done your spiritual work, and if you have opened up, you've built yourself a tool belt to deal with these issues when they do arrive. And they will, for sure.
And you'll always know the truth from the heart if you just connect there. Even if you don't know the answer right away, my experience on my journey has been, even just if I don't know what to do next and I'm in complete, fear, I will just stop and put my hand at my heart. I've even had the voice come in, like you were describing in the beginning, that brought you the downloads, come in when I'm at my lowest points and just start guiding me. There's always a guide to come in. There's always that higher intelligence to tap into.
Well, for a while, it was, what would Jesus do? As a bumper sticker and everything else. That's pretty simple. Or what would love do? If you're not aligned with Christianity in this moment, just go, what would love do? Love is universal. And again, it's not going to be a complicated answer. This guy hit me. What would love do? Would it hit him back? No. Would it name call? No. Would it diminish that other person in any way? No. The answer is simple. But man, running through our ego and our fear systems, that's when it becomes complicated.
And love is who we truly are. And that's what I believe he was here to teach. And it was manipulated for the purposes of whatever it was, to control, to, because his voice or his teachings were so powerful. And it's literally kind of like the warping of the frequency. It's such a subtle manipulation, but it does
makes it
so
all
much.
discordance. It can sound. It goes back to that idea of two frequencies. Actually, I'm feeling this and hearing it in a new way. It's when, as we discussed, two frequencies are close, that they're actually the most agitating and disturbing. So yes, here we have Jesus' original teachings that didn't seem complicated. Yet as they filter through and you hear them through the church today, or these different denominations of religions, it's like it becomes complicated. Yet at the core, they're all still finding their way back to the teachings of Jesus. It's almost like they're the most disturbing because they're so close and they're like just agitating us. As soon as you're agitated and off balance, that's when you're the easiest to control.
And that's exactly what I tuned into when I was a child. Growing up, I was raised in a Christian Mormon religion. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and it was very much.
I lost you for
like a heartbeat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, it was very disturbing. Just the frequency of the information I was receiving in Sunday school class. It, like at 11 years old, I said, I don't want to be in this church anymore. And now I know why, because it was literally, there's a resonance to truth. So maybe we can touch on that before we wrap up. Is there an actual frequency of truth? Why do we feel that in our bodies when something is, at that higher level?
Absolutely. I believe there's a resonance of truth, but is it a sound frequency? It doesn't need to be. It would be much more quantum than that. And you can walk into a room and go, something's not right here. Or a person comes into your field and go, I know I can trust them. I don't know how I know that, but I know I can trust them. Malcolm Gladwell in his book, Blink, touched on all that. It's like, there does seem to be some wiring in us that is mysterious and unexplainable to a point. How do we know these things right away? Like an art historian can look at something that to the common eye would go, oh, that's a Van Gogh or whatever. And it's that first reaction. It says there's something, I can't even pinpoint it, but I know it's not. That's a huge gift, and it is a frequency. I just don't know. It's not a sound frequency to me. Maybe we can immerse ourselves in frequencies, maybe this particular chord, and when we're all in it, we all do feel that we're in the trust frequency in that moment together. I think that's very possible, but I think we're actually more advanced than that. Our capabilities are higher than that, and we already do it. We already can feel.
It's like naturally doing it. We don't need to overthink it. And what I was seeing as you were speaking was your diagram. Again, that's really such a beautiful visual aid of how it works. It's like literally when you're connected here at your 0 point, which is that node, you can feel that connection and the ripples of everything. And so your body can detect that. Your body
and in that model, you are connected to everything. And that model that Manoscafato said is the most beautifully represented model of the quantum universe he's ever seen. He wondered where I got my physics degree. And like when I told him I failed 9th grade math and that was the end of it, he's like, how the hell did you build that? It's because he recognized it very fluidly models this connectivity. It holds both structures that are their own individual complicated structures, but it also just has the 0 point proving that there's this connection out from it, that it truly is affecting either vibrationally, magnetically, energetically, is having an impact on those around it. The strongest impact on those closest to it, but still an impact that just is affecting out into the field.
The quantum universe, yeah. And universes upon universes, right?
Yeah, very potentially, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this just, again, we're just scratching the surface here, but thanks for having this incredible conversation. I realized I just had this like lightning bolt moment where I'm like, I know incredible beings and we just need to start having these conversations and rippling them out, just like you said with your diagram. And that's how I, got to know you as well, was just, I heard you on your radio station, the Awakening Code Radio. And, just started meeting all these incredible people and starting to see synchronicities and, just having these conversations really brought a lot forward for me. So
yeah, Einstein, famous physicist, said synchronicity is God's way of remaining anonymous. That kind of sums up a whole lot right there, is that God's at work and synchronicity is the device allowing you as part of this experiment to know that God's at work.
It's letting you in on that little mystery. It's like, hey, I'm
totally
watching, I'm here,
The invitation is always there. And good luck with your podcast. I think it's beautiful, and it's wonderful. The wonderful thing about the internet and social media and this ability is to connect. And I don't believe for a minute that we have to think of, unless you're trying to make money, and a lot of it, that it needs to be seen by millions of people or it's not worthwhile. If 2 people watch this, or 10 or 20, and if those people end up saying, hey, I learned something, and they share it, that's how the quantum field works. It's not one who had all the information and tried to get it out there. It is everybody sharing. And if it's just more than you, even if it's just one more than you, there used to be an old Clairol commercial. If they told 2 people and they told 2 people, pretty soon you're all in the field together. So let's just do our work, and good luck to you. And I'm proud of you, and we'll talk again.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks so much. And yeah, people can get in touch with you by sonicgeometry.com. You've got your Awakening Code Radio that is global at this point. What else?
Any podcast. Most people listen on the podcast. So Awakening Code Radio is available on podcast through any podcast platform, iTunes, it doesn't matter. Just type in Awakening Code Radio. You'll find tons of our old shows. There's some great ones. You can just listen randomly. There is a podcast server called Snippet, SNIPPET. And we took some of what we thought were kind of like the best of Awakening Code Radio, condensed them into 20 minutes or less podcasts. So Nassim is on there, Robert Grant is on there, Deepak Chopra is on there, Marianne Williamson's on there. The guy who wrote the Celestine Prophecy, I can't think of his name right now. He's one of the guests. Just go to snippet.com and you can find, and it's called The Awakening Code. Since it's not radio, it's just The Awakening Code. But that's a great way. Cool. Smaller versions, tighter versions of our
bite size, right? Yay! Right. Well, have a beautiful day, and yeah, we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.
We will for sure. I might, reach out to you when the book is done, and everybody does their promotional tours just to raise awareness. Maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a Sedona tour. All right, love you, brother. Thank you so much.
I love Sedona. All right, bye, sweetie.
All right, bye.
Bye.